Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar, and we're going to show some love to the rhythm section today. I've got a really cool guy to interview. We're talking to Kevin Smith, who's playing with Goodbye June. He's the drummer. Kevin's kind of like the Tiger Woods of drumming. Not that he has sex with porn stars, but he's started at such a young age. The skill set he has would be really difficult to replicate. He grew up in Dallas, Texas, and that's where he lived until he was 18. And when he moved over to Nashville, he's been playing drums since the 4th grade, which is, I think, age 10, Kevin?
Yes, yep, about that age.
Played in middle and high school band, took lessons. He got put in a college-level jazz band when he was in 7th grade. I can't even imagine what that was like. Drum captain for 3 years in his high school marching band. He recorded an album, moved out to Nashville in 2009. Graduated from Belmont University in 2012, and he actually got out a semester early. He has studied privately under some monster players. Chester Thompson, who played with Genesis, Phil Collins, Weather Report, and Frank Zappa, and he's a phenomenal drummer. If you want to see some amazing drumming, check out, if you could find online, some videos of Chester Thompson when he's playing with Zappa. Dorico Watson, who is Victor Wooten's drummer. Victor's a bass player. And I think so, right? Victor Wooten's a bass player.
Yes, yeah.
Awesome bass player. And Todd London, who's a Nashville session drummer and a private instructor. Professionally, he subbed in for the Christian rock group December Radio for his show. He's played with Logan Brill, who's a pretty successful Nashville country artist. He's performed on the Grand Ole Opry, opened for David Nail, the band Perry, Tyler Farr, and loads of others. He's toured all over the U.S. playing different shows, different venues. As I said, he's currently playing with Goodbye June. They're a really good rock group out of Nashville. They've been signed to a major label, Interscope, for a little over a year. With Goodbye June, he's opened for ZZ Top for over a dozen shows, including ZZ Top's first show that they ever played in LaGrange, Texas, which was kind of historic because of their big hit, LaGrange. And he played in front of 20,000 people there. And he also opened up for them at the famous Ryman Theater in Nashville. He's played South by Southwest a couple of times. He's performed at Live on the Green, opened for the Struts and Whiskey Myers. He toured Europe over a 6-week period throughout 9 countries, playing 30 shows. And he just concluded with Goodbye June a co-headlining tour with the LA rock group Bad Flower, where they spent 4 weeks touring across the states. And he's about to tour the East Coast, opening up for Greta Van Fleet. And he's currently playing in churches throughout Nashville when needed, which do not minimize that. Playing in church in Nashville is not like playing in church here in Lutz, where I live. Playing in church in Nashville is not only... well, first of all, I understand the churches pay there. Is that correct, Kevin?
For me personally, it does, and I'm very grateful for that. Some churches, they look at it as like a service. They say, if you're going to play here, that's your tithing and, that's your service to the church. And I agree with that too. It's just kind of how the church decides. And if the player wants to be a part of that, then they kind of do that.
And it's also like, I cannot tell you how many stories that I've interviewed musicians, and it's a breeding ground for networking. Loads of guys got really good gigs because they played with a guy at church who was friends with the bass player at someone else's band, and they needed a drummer or a guitarist or another bass player because their bass player got thrown out or flaked out or something. So,
definitely.
That's it's the meeting center for musicians. So anyway, Kevin, I really appreciate your time. He's actually getting ready to go into rehearsal right after this call. So thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you for having me on the podcast. And, it's just funny hearing like your bullet points of success in life and music read off to you like that. So thank you again for having me, and looking forward to it.
Well, you're welcome. And, I would assume that this is the first of many times you're going to hear those things, but I've been in that position, so I understand it does sound kind of funny.
Yeah.
You're just looking at it that, man, you're getting through another day like everybody else. So I hear you. So first, congratulations, man, for landing a national tour with a band signed to a major label. How did this gig come about, and how did you feel when you got it?
So it was. I've been with the Goodbye June guys for about 5 years, and it was kind of one of those things where you said like the random network stories and I have to literally. I was thinking about this. It's those random guys and girls that you just kind of meet, and this guy Kenny Fuller, who went to school with me at Belmont. He came up to me and he's like, "Hey, we've been playing at school a lot, and I noticed that we gel really well. I've been playing for this band, and would you like to maybe see if you could audition for them? Because I know one of their drummers is about to head out." And of course, I heard a couple of their songs, and I was like, "If I don't get this, I'm going to be so upset because I just love the music. They're so awesome,
really good."
And I show up, and they sent me about they sent me their whole first album, and they wanted me to learn 3 songs, but I love the music so much, I was just like, I'm going to learn all of it. Awesome. So I learned all of it, and it's complicated music. It's not like someone hands you a chart and you're just going to be able to fly through it. There's a lot of syncopation and hits and riffs that you kind of have to follow, and you have to be in charge of and lead. And so I get there, and these guys are now like essentially family and brothers. But when you first meet anyone in the band, we're all super tall, big, long hair, beards,
yeah,
like Southern everything.
Right.
In fact, one of their stories is when they got signed, one of the guys at the label was saying that he thought he was signing a football line instead of a band. But we show up, and they're like, well, let's see if it even works out. We may have to cancel the show just because it's coming up, and these are hard songs. And we get through the 3 like pretty easily, and they're like, well, dude, why don't you just learn a couple more? And I was like, well, I learned all of it. And they were like, oh, well, let's just keep playing. So we did, and from there it was kind of like, hey, you'll fill in, and whenever we need you, we'll call. And after about 5 years, it's just kind of the same thing, and I think I've kind of solidified a spot from a live standpoint.
That's awesome. And
yeah,
and people, listeners, I hate to say listeners, that's so impersonal.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to see a great video of Goodbye June and Kevin's playing in particular, go on YouTube and search Goodbye June and in quotes, oh no, the YouTube Nashville sessions. It's a really, really good video of the band, and in particular Kevin. He does some great fills in that song.
Yeah, well, and I think the thing about this band in particular is like the live show. That video is completely live. It's like one take that we decided was the one we wanted to use. And if you come out to a show, it's the live show is just electric, and it's really cool to see that if you're a musician or not a musician, because you get to kind of see, all right, this is what it looks like, the process, the actual art of the music. You get to see that interconnection. We're just kind of in a circle looking at each other. On a random morning in Nashville, we kind of got together for this shoot and just had a blast. So, yeah, recommend the video. And
you're leaving tomorrow, it looks like, to go up to Ohio, then back down to Tennessee, then to New York. Have you been to New York before?
I have been to New York. This will be probably my 3rd or 4th time. Sadly, they've all been music trips. So I don't get to necessarily visit the city in a way that a traveler would, but it's a great place, and I know we're going to go down from there. We're going to cut around the East Coast a little bit too, but yeah, we're actually leaving after this interview. We're going to go up to Ohio and do this festival.
Awesome, man. That's very cool. So let me ask you, when you first hooked up with these guys, being the new guy in a band is tough enough. It's probably intimidating, and it's like being a new guy anywhere in any club. You're the new guy, and you got to find your place, and it takes a while to feel comfortable. But being a new guy in a band where the other guys are all related, because I think they're all like cousins, aren't they?
Yeah, the 3 guys in the band are all first cousins. Okay,
so that's got to be a little nerve-wracking. What were some of the things going through your mind when you first got the gig, and how did you handle the anxiety that came along with that?
That's a good question. I tried not to let that thought process of this is a family band mess with me too much. And at first it was more of like the first couple shows were really fill-in shows for a guy that a really talented drummer here in Nashville. He was doing some other stuff, and he ended up landing a really incredible gig. So at least from a live standpoint, I jumped in permanently. But at first, I just kind of treated it like every other gig, and it was like, all right, these guys are really fun, really like I said, electric, exciting. And for me, I just, I took it very seriously, but also, and I'm assuming you've heard this from other musicians, like it's a lot more about your hang on the road and who you are as a person that really affects the kind of gigs you land. Because me personally, I'm not the best drummer by far in any capacity, but it's just like, is this guy going to be cool on the 9-hour drive between Nashville and wherever we're headed?
Right.
Is he going to be helpful? Is he not going to be a burden? And so that's how I treated maybe the little anxiety that I had. But these guys are incredible human beings and kind of immediately adopted me because I'm, in age speaking, the youngest of the group.
Right.
And so I think it was fun. They just had like a little new baby brother to kind of pick on maybe, or just mess around with. But no, they're great. And it helped that I knew the bass player so well. And I think it's just kind of one of those things where you figure everyone out. You get to know them really fast on the road, and just be respectful. And it turns out pretty well. But yeah, these guys have been playing a long time together. So,
well, I think you said a couple of things there, like the fact that you, and this is it's an easy concept, but it's not always easy to execute. You said, hey man, this is just another gig. Like you basically said, I'm going to do this one day at a time. And I think in general, for anything that people are going through, when you approach it like that, it's a lot easier to manage any anxiety, because you when you're taking it one gig at a time, what's the stress? There really is none. You just do the gig.
Right.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of maturity that in on your end in doing that, and I never thought about that. But when you are in such close quarters, I call it like insular intimacy. It's kind of like when you're on a plane with somebody and you get off and like their life story, they know your life story, and you'll never
when your legs are crisscrossing in the aisle and they're sleeping on your shoulder, you quickly learn their name and what they do, and you figure out how you're going to get along for the plane ride. And sorry, I don't mean to hijack this.
Go ahead.
I can't even take credit for this, but basically when I was younger and first started traveling, because as much as I love Belmont and like it is an incredible networking medium, and the teachers like Chester and Todd London and Dorico, and I even had private lesson teachers from a classical side like Dr. Nolan and a couple others. They basically people were teaching me before I got out on the road. You've got 3 criteria that have to kind of work, and you really need 2 out of the 3 to be good for a gig to be worth it. And maybe you've heard this before, maybe not.
No.
But it was the hang, the money, and the music. And for the gig to be worth it, you really need 2 out of the 3 to actually mean something to you. So if you're not really a big fan of the music, and this is from a side guy standpoint more than like an artist. If you don't like your music as an artist, I don't know what you're doing. But for me, it's like if you aren't a big fan of the music that you're playing, but you love the people and it's a good monetary gig, you go ahead and do it. Try it out, see what you like. If the music is great and the people are great and the money's not necessarily there, go ahead, try it out, see if it's worth it, because maybe in the long run people pick up on it and the money comes later. And just that little triangle cycle of, are 2 of these making it worth it? That was kind of how I filtered out what I wanted to do. And at first, to be honest, like I took anything and everything, but that was just how I went about it.
You said yes to everything.
I need something to break me out of the school bubble and get me incorporated into like the real world. So I took everything, and it ended up working out because I met the guy that got me the current gig that I'm on, and I filled in for a guy at Belmont for a big showcase they did, and one of my friends saw me at the showcase. He had never met me before, and he walked around Belmont during a school day at the School of Music because he wasn't a School of Music guy. He skipped his classes, going to like classroom to classroom, just looking for me. Awesome. And he found me, and he's like, "Dude, did you do this? This is you, right? You played that showcase?" And yeah. He's like, "Dude, you got to come play in my band." And I was like, "Okay, well, let's do it." And so it's just those things, those random things that most people were like, "I don't want to do that," ended up helping me get other things later on.
Well, let me tell you something interesting. I have interviewed a lot of musicians, and first of all, the guys that give me that answer, and it's not like you all know each other and discuss this, but they say, "Hey, I said yes to everything," are the guys that got the most activity going for them, that have the learning curve, not the learning curve, the food chain, going up the food chain curve is escalated for those guys. Instead of it being a sloping bell curve, it's like it doesn't go slope, it climbs much quicker for those guys. And I happen to get along better with those guys for some reason, but that's a very consistent thing about the guys who said everything. The slope is much quicker. So,
well, I like that you said food chain, because for me, I say hungry. And it's just basically, I saw all these guys that are better than me, and they're getting gigs. And in your head, you go, if you want this, if you're hungry enough to get this, how are you going to survive in the jungle?
Right.
And it was one of those things where it's like, well, I'm going to take this tiny thing, survive off of it, and get to the next thing. Take this tiny thing, and all of a sudden these tiny things were like, oh, well, someone paid attention to this gig you were on. Now it's bigger. Oh, they saw you do this. Now that person is interested in you coming and playing. And all of a sudden you're just kind of, like you said, you climb the food chain. You get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it all depends on how hungry you are and how hungry you stay. And now I think, I don't know if you talk to the same guys and they have this kind of answer, but like as you get to a certain place, you can go, okay, well, I'm comfortable here and I'm doing fine, and I don't have to do anything and everything.
Yeah.
But I recommend starting that way and just being open, being friendly, and taking whatever you can, figuring it out.
No doubt. I agree with you 100%. And you said something too about like you saw other people and you're like, man, if they're doing it, I could do it. I know for me, that sense of like righteous indignation has, like in business for me, pushed me to do things. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, because you sort of have a bit of a, not a chip on your shoulder, but a kind of a chip on your shoulder. It's not a malicious thing, but it's like, man, if that guy's there with something, I've got to get there, because that guy is not, he's not much better than me. He probably is not even as good as me. So what's the difference? And so, I think that's when it comes down to it, that righteous indignation, when channeled positively, is a good motivator.
Totally.
So what was it like opening up for ZZ Top, and how'd you feel being around those guys, and what was like the biggest takeaway or lesson that you got through interacting with them, either business, personal, or, musically, anything?
Okay. Man, when I first heard the rumor that we were even possibly in the running to do that, I was super excited, and it's hard to keep those kind of secrets. You just get so excited. And I'm from Texas, and so the little band from Texas, and you grew up hearing them, even if you didn't necessarily know who they were. One of their songs, and so when we got it, I was super excited, and I'm trying to think. The first show was in Nashville at our newer outdoor amphitheater called Ascend Amphitheater, and it was us first, and then an incredible band called Blackberry Smoke.
Yeah, I know them.
And then ZZ. And I just remember walking out for sound check, being so excited. And for me, and maybe for the guys, I didn't ask them personally, it's like when you're playing with someone like that and they've invited you to come be a part of their show, you want to be extremely courteous to who they are as people. So at first I was very like hands off. Like if they were walking anywhere near me, I was like quiet, didn't say a word, didn't distract them. But I remember we were sound checking, and I look over and I see Billy Gibbons, who's the guitarist, lead singer, off to the side, and he's just bobbing his head to the song. And I think that speaks so much volume, because I've looked out a bunch of times, different people that I've played for, and the worst thing to see is just the dead stare, no smile, and no movement.
That's bad no matter what situation you're in, man.
Right, yeah, totally. But if you see, even if they're not showing you anything except for a head bob, that's them listening, and that's them enjoying it.
Yeah, man.
And it's a very subtle thing, and he's doing it, and like, you know, he's wearing his sunglasses, he's in silk pajamas because they'd just gotten back from Europe. He's got his rings, and you know, he's like so suave, so cool, and like he walks, like the way he walks, it's almost like he's gliding. He's the coolest dude ever.
He is.
So that was like the first encounter, and to be honest, I think like the Ryman and LaGrange were like the two shows that really stuck out, because I'll tell you this story as fast as I can. LaGrange,
take your time.
One of their maybe their most popular song, but one of their biggest songs.
Yep.
And it's in Texas, tiny little town, and the whole town basically showed up for this show. It's outdoors, and we're opening for them. It's just us and them, and I think they blew something like 4 to 5 generators. And we get on stage, and I mean, it's just a sea of people. And we start playing, and about 15 seconds into our first song, the entire power goes out. So the only thing you can hear is drums, because drums don't lose power.
Uh-huh.
And of course, everyone starts screaming, and they're like, "Yeah!" And we were all looking at each other like, "Uh-oh." So then the power kicks back on. They're like, "All right, well, let's start it again." So we started again. About 20 seconds into the first song, goes out again.
Oh.
And we look over and we try it again. And maybe it was just 3 times, but the last time we were trying it, they're like, "Hey, we're trying this one more time. And if it doesn't work, just get off stage and drive away." And we were like, "Well, what about the gear?" They're like, "We've got like 20,000 pretty upset, drunk Texan people here. You're not going to want to be on stage when they realize that the show's not going to happen." And I remember literally just shutting my eyes and praying, being like, "God, please let this work, because I want this to happen so bad."
Yeah.
And it didn't go out until the very last song. We hit the last note, and they were setting up ZZ stuff, and the power goes out. So they'd drive a generator from San Antonio out to the show. And, of course, it worked out, and they get on stage, and everyone just loses their mind. But it was an incredible experience. Like, I remember standing off to the side, backstage a little bit, like during LaGrange, and I don't know if I've ever heard anything that loud that wasn't like the crowd, because they're not amplified.
And it's just 3 dudes.
It is, and it is, and that's the other thing that was just from a musical learning standpoint was, I think a lot of people nowadays they want to make the show perfect, and they want to make it loud and full. And you watch 3 men that have played 40-ish years, I think, together. Yes. Or more.
Yeah.
And you just see, like I said it earlier, you see art, but you just see this like communication and the knowing of each other so well, and it's fun. Like, even if there is a flub, you get to see the imperfection and enjoy it how it is. They don't mess up, to be honest. Like, and if they do, I don't see it. But
yeah.
That was something I learned from them musically, was you could have 2 guys, you could have 1 guy up there, but you know, it's all about that communication, that understanding of each other, the heavy listening of each other that just kind of melds into this beautiful thing. And obviously, if you are an artist or a player that likes to add extra things and make it this grand show, do it. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But it was also interesting to see the complete opposite of that, the very open, just simple setup of everything. And then I think from a business standpoint, you watch all the guys are kind of doing their own things. We really did not want to bother them during the day. But I always remember watching Billy specifically. That guy just doesn't stop working, whether it's the music side of things or his own business side. And that was another thing that I just respected was he could literally just sit on his bus and do nothing all day.
Right.
But he comes out, he listens to us. He kind of talked to us about what he loved about the show, what maybe some things that we could look at. And then I remember his business partners kind of coming in and talking to him. And it was very, very eye-opening to see someone work hard all the time and still enjoy life. Like he loved what he did or does. So
that's great. Thanks for sharing that. A couple of things that you mentioned. One thing for sure I can tell you, and this is easier to do as you get older, you realize that these guys are no different than you. They have the same bullshit going on. Life hands them the same challenges they hand you. They got too much on their plate. Their kids don't listen to them. They've got crisis at home from time to time. They have stress and bills to pay. And they are really no different to you. And again, that's a little easier to realize as you get a little older and as you'll meet more people. You won't, I'm 53, so I've kind of been around the block a little more than you have, but it won't take you very long to realize this because you'll be interacting with more of these guys and you'll see that they're just no different than you, really.
Right.
I mean, literally, they're no different than you. They have a little more experience. The other thing is I've learned work ethic is about, for me, I always try to judge somebody. Of course, we're not supposed to judge, but that's bullshit. I always look at someone's work ethic because I have found the guys with the best, you either have a good work ethic or you don't, and that usually isn't fleeting. It's like you said, Billy's on all the time. Mm-hmm. You're either a worker or you're not. That's usually not, it's not like, well, you work only Monday and Tuesdays and you take, you're always doing something. But I have found the guys with the best work ethic are also the most trustworthy people, the most sincere people. It's a characteristic trait that's a strong indicator about someone's overall life. Not 100% because you got some guys that are just assholes, but I find them few and far between.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's really cool, man, to hear that stuff.
Yeah.
You grew up in Dallas, which is an awesome music town, obviously. What did you get out of Dallas musically?
It was interesting because going back to that 7th grade college jazz band thing, as a kid, I was more learning like the classical side of percussion and drums. Like I was playing like concert snare drum and marimba. And for people that don't know what a marimba is, it's basically a xylophone with less harsh sounds and timpani. And I started doing the marching band thing, and I did drum set because obviously as a drummer, you're like, I got to learn drum set. That's the cool thing. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't great. It's just we did this jazz camp, and University of North Texas is right by where I live. And so they would have their teachers or some of their teachers come down and basically teach kids and some college level guys that were in the camp too, like jazz. And I remember there were only about 4 or 5 drummers the year I did this, and I was the only one who had like a certain feel. And I couldn't read the jazz charts, but I had a certain feel. And the professor put me in the top band. So I was with I think it was a TCU jazz band bass player, and a couple other guys were senior high school, going into college, close to that age. And I remember just almost crying every day because I couldn't read the charts. I knew the feel and I knew what they wanted, but I couldn't do any of the hits. And it really, really made me nervous. So I stopped playing drum set for a couple years. And then I think my sophomore, maybe freshman year of high school, I had a friend call me and go, "Hey, you know how to play drums, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, kind of." He's like, "This guy needs you to come and play like a 2-hour show tomorrow, all these country tunes. Some are his and some are covers." I was like, "I don't know how to learn 2 hours of music in a day and remember all of it." He's like, "Well, I mean, just try it." So we did, and it went atrociously, but I apparently did better than the other drummer that they had. So I ended up in this high school band with a few friends from high school. They were all a year ahead of me, but it was a country band, and we literally basically had to lie about how old we were to play these bars. And so I remember one night I was downtown Dallas, and we played a 4-hour set from 11 p.m. to 3 a.m.
Wow.
On a Tuesday night or Wednesday night. Not a soul was in the bar. So the bartenders are playing baseball with a bar stool leg and a crumpled up piece of paper, and I'm playing Check Yes or No and some Randy Rogers Band, which is a great Texas country band, for 4 hours, no break. And I had to be up at 5 a.m. to do marching band, and it was coming on 3 a.m. And I think that night collectively the band made $6.
Oh my God.
And the guy kept it, the lead singer kept it. He's like, "We'll put it towards the album."
Yeah.
So I played for free for 4 hours, got about 30 minutes of sleep, got up and went to school, did marching band early in the morning and marching band after. But what was cool was that was the first. I never thought I was going to do music professionally. And I think that night after that, the school day, I'm getting into bed and I go, "You know what? You didn't complain once about being tired today because you did something that you loved and it was fun." And I think if people find that, that's obviously an important thing to realize. And of course, me being kind of a dummy that I was, I still wanted to go into medicine and be a doctor even after that. But eventually my drum teacher kind of told me to try music. But Dallas kind of just taught me, I guess, it gave me my stage legs, I guess I would like to call it. Is I got in front of people, I embarrassed the heck out of myself, figured out what it took to load in, load out, practice, be ready to play whatever you could. And as crummy as some of the stuff was, it was an awesome experience. I got to record the one album that was out there. I think the guy pulled it down, but it's just all these firsts, very important firsts in Dallas, and it was just a great experience.
It's also interesting how, if you look back, you can see almost against your will, the universe kept putting these things in front of you, like tapping you on the shoulder gently, saying, "Hey, you need to be a drummer. Hey, you need to be," in spite of you put it down and then you came back and you were, really upset and frustrated. And then, so I think that's pretty cool. That's it's like serendipity, that's the universe supporting your
right.
decision,
Well,
which is cool.
I was thinking about this the other day. It's this might sound like a romanticized idea, but, like you said, it's like the universe tapping on your shoulder. I think there were these, I call them players in my life. And I don't mean the music players. I mean these individuals that stepped into my life just the right time for just the right amount of time. Because some of them I don't see anymore, don't talk to. But Mom caught me hitting her dashboard in the minivan on her light rock mix when we would drive around. She'd go, "Do you like drums?" I go, "I don't know. I'm just kind of doing stuff to the music." So she said, "You have to take drum lessons." And I didn't want to, but she's like, you have to. So I did, and I picked it up fast. And my first drum teacher actually passed away suddenly from a heart attack. He was a younger guy, incredible player. And I quit playing drums. And in fact, I told my mom when she went to his funeral to bury my drumsticks with him, which is very morbid and terrible.
No, but that's a normal thing for a young kid to do. I totally get that. I don't think it's
I think I was in fourth
terrible.
or fifth grade, so it was just like, I think it was me being like, I'm burying this permanently because this is the universe saying you're done.
Yeah.
I wanted to play bassoon. My mom's like, no, if you go into middle school band, you know what you're going to play. And then all of a sudden, this high school guy that I never would have met, because he was a year older than me and we were just in completely different circles, steps in, adopts me into his band. And from that, my drum teacher hears this and goes, you need to go to Nashville to go to this school, because I'd never heard of it. And then I'm there and I meet the guy that is just randomly like, you need to audition for this specific band, who just needed a sub, and now I'm here. And it's just one of those things where you're right. Like, if you like have that feeling, sometimes it's important to take that little leap of faith and just follow that path. And if it doesn't necessarily work out how you think it's going to work out, it's not a big deal. But like, I definitely believe in that kind of, some people will say universe, I would say God, but just the way life kind of pans out and works, I feel like it's important to kind of take a breath and go, maybe I'll take this path that is clearly in front of me and try and enjoy it as much as I can. And so far it's worked out for me.
And you said something like, what's the downside if you don't? The pain of regret is far greater pain than the pain of mistake. I think anyway. Well,
yeah. And like I said, I wanted to be a doctor all of high school. And that's actually how I got out of Belmont early. It wasn't the fact that I was a talented musician. It was the fact that I had taken all of these courses and tests in high school and basically ended up, as I went into Belmont, I was a sophomore. Just because I had taken AP biology and AP chemistry and all these classes. And the last semester of high school was when I decided that it was not going to be doctor. I couldn't do it. And I'm so glad I didn't do it. Not because I wouldn't have enjoyed the challenge or the school. It's just you realize who you are as you go down the path you're supposed to take. And you can kind of look over at the path you were going to take and go, yeah, that was not the one I was supposed to take. I'm glad I'm here.
Good for you, man. It sounds like you made some good decisions.
Yeah, luckily.
It sounds like you had a real supportive mom. What kind of childhood did you have in general?
Yeah, she, number one fan for sure. Let's see. She is an accountant, and she's done accountant work for a couple of different companies, and my dad was an IT specialist at IBM, and super smart. I have two brothers. I'm in the middle, so my older brother has a biochemistry degree. I know he's working on his master's in that as well. He teaches biology. Last teaching job was at University of North Texas. Little brother has he's going to kill me for not knowing the exact thing, but it's basically economics and business kind of mixed from UNT. And so everyone in the family is very smart, and we were a good close family unit. And mom specifically was all about like finding what each kid really loved doing and really supporting them. And at first I wanted to be a Major League Baseball pitcher, and super supportive. And then she kind of noticed the drum thing, so super supportive of that. And we didn't take a lot of family vacations because she wanted to give us private lessons. So instead of us going on like beach trips, which maybe she would have loved to do, she goes, no, Kevin's going to get a lesson a week for drums, and older brother's going to get a lesson of saxophone, and little brother's going to get a lesson, or if he doesn't want to do that, he can do this or that for basketball or chess or whatever. And obviously dad was kind of the same way. At first he was so busy with IBM that he would come home and just ask us what we were doing. But then later on he was really involved. He was always really involved in sports. They always tried to come out to the shows that I had, and I think that that's important. I think that having, I wouldn't call him a cheerleader, but having someone in your corner is very important, because I think even if you're one of the best at what you do, there's days where you go, I think I'm done. I can't go any further, or I'm not good, or anything like that. Having that support system is pretty vital to not necessarily like success, but in a way it is success, I guess.
Yeah, man. Life is difficult at times, and you need support no matter what the hell you're doing, and no matter, where you are, man. It's really important to have support for sure.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't know. Like, where I grew up was kind of interesting. There were a few like really talented musicians that actually came out of like my high school in my city, and I don't necessarily know if people would know their names. They're kind of like side players like me. Mm-hmm. But I think it's just funny that a lot of us came out of such it was a suburb of Dallas-Fort Worth, basically. So the fact that so many of us came out of there surprised me, but in a good way. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that's as uncommon as you might think, because you always hear stories about some obscure high school that's cranking out loads of football players or that's baseball true. Players, or in your case, musicians. So I think that's more common than you think. It's just the story isn't so well told, but I don't think that's uncommon.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. You studied under some really talented players. How'd you get connected, like, for example, with a guy like Chester Thompson?
So Chester, I don't know if he is anymore, but he was an adjunct faculty member at Belmont, as was DeRico. And then Todd is, I think, a full-fledged faculty member there. And if you're in the Nashville area, those three guys I think they do give just private lessons, either at Forks Drum Closet, or maybe you can meet them somewhere. But I learned so much from each of them individually. But I remember Chester very specifically, because he was my first drum teacher at Belmont, private lesson-wise. And basically, I get in there, and all I really knew how to do was play the songs that I had learned from high school. And I think that when I auditioned, they saw the promise in me, not necessarily the final product. They saw like
potential.
Yeah, exactly. And Chester is just an amazing human being, first off. But his whole process was he wanted you to be able to play whatever you could think. And so he made me play, if I played something right-hand lead, I had to play left-hand lead exactly the same.
Wow.
It's just one of those things where I learned so much so fast. And at first I was intimidated because I knew who he was and what he had done. But I think that made it the only thing that affected me was that it made me listen so much more to everything he said.
Right.
I do remember him canceling a lesson and being like, "Yeah, I'm sorry, I got to go out of town last second." And I'm like, "Okay." And I'm at home that day that I was supposed to have the lesson pretty late, and it's on TV, and I'm watching the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, and of course he's there with all the members of Genesis. And so the next week I'm like, "Did you cancel our lesson to go get inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?" And he's like, yeah, whatever, but let's do the thing we were supposed to work on." And I was like, "Hold on, we can't just brush that off. Like, that's an incredible thing." Like, and I was like, "Congratulations," of course. But he was just so humble and such a sweet person. He's like, no, this is your lesson time. Let's get to work.
Very cool.
And I respected that, because like, yeah, he understands that, like, I'm here to do this. Like, let's get to it.
Well, he also understands that at that point in time, and I mean this in an only respectful way, which way the cash is flowing. And he's honoring that, and he's fulfilling his responsibility in that relationship, which is
totally.
You know what? I wonder. I mean, I cannot imagine what it was like playing under Frank Zappa, because he was more of a conductor and a brilliant composer. He was a great guitar player, but he was more of a conductor, an orchestrator of stuff. And the stuff he did was so just outside any box at all at times. And and he was a very, from what I've read of him, he was a very, very demanding guy on himself as well as others. So I cannot imagine, you're having to play right hand leads with your left hand. He probably had to play it with his foot.
Oh yeah. Well, and we went through that too. Like, it was, by the time I got out of lessons with Chester, I was very, very shocked at how independent my limbs were. And it's one of those things. I remember specifically, before I move away from Zappa, because I'll forget, he spoke such high, like a very reverent tone of Frank Zappa. And I think that that was just a moment for him. I don't remember how long exactly he played with Frank Zappa, but
I think 3 years wasn't.
Yeah, because I know there were a couple of guys that are still playing as well that joined the band, but yeah, he just adored Frank Zappa. And I remember going to Zappa Plays Zappa, where his son Dweezil was.
Man, I saw that
Nashville.
show. That was incredible.
Yeah, well, Chester was in the crowd, and it was almost like he got to go back in time a little bit, and I think it was special for him. But what was I going to say? Shoot, this always happens.
You were talking about Chester and his experience with Zappa, and when you got out of working with him, that all your limbs were really independent.
Oh yeah, basically, to sum that up, it was just it was this. I remember going into lessons, and to try and do something essentially backwards in a way, while playing the limbs in a way that you would never play them, but the same groove, it made me have to think extremely hard, at least for me. So I'd sit there in lessons, and he could see my eyes shut, squinting, trying to visualize something, and I'd mess up a little bit, and it didn't feel good, and I'd get frustrated, and he'd go, "What are you thinking about?" And I would say, "Well, I'm thinking about this thing that I'm trying to do." And I was just like, "All right, I got to play this and then this, but I can't play with this." And he goes, No. Stop thinking. And I was like, "Well, I can't stop thinking. I can't even play this." He goes, No. Stop thinking. Hear it for a second in your head. And so I didn't play for about a minute. You just go, hear it. And he goes, now play it. And I would just play it, and it would work.
It's almost like magic spell.
Yeah. I never understood it. So, but I've used it to this day, and maybe he'd be proud, maybe he'd just think it's funny, but don't think, just play. And I think that it's super important for players to kind of do that occasionally. Sometimes you really do need to think about what you're doing, but he was totally right. Just the more you think about certain things, the more you can't play. And that was one of the big takeaways I took from Chester.
There's I don't know if you ever heard of Charles Bukowski.
No.
So Bukowski is a writer, a fiction writer, and he was a very, very unique guy. In the late 60s, he died in the mid 90s, I believe. But I've read a lot of his books, and he's one of these guys you either love him or you hate him.
Okay.
Anyway, he had this thing. One of his famous quotes was "Don't try," because he felt that, I guess, kind of like what Chester was saying, just let it happen. Don't try. When you let it happen, it happens. When you have to force something, it's not going to work. And I think that's kind of what he was saying. When you saw Zappa Plays Zappa, was it the show? Because when I saw them, they played the entire. I don't know if you know this album, the One Size Fits All album, which is one of my favorite Zappa albums. I know they had a bunch of different tours, but that was really an amazing show. That was. I
want to think what year it was. It would have been 2010 or 2011, and they were not the main act. It was Maybe there was an opener for them too, but it was them and Return to Forever.
Oh, Chick Corea.
Yeah, and
wow.
it was awesome. Like it was Chick Corea, Jean-Luc Ponty,
that guy,
Stanley Clarke.
Oh my God! So you saw the original? That was
I think it was. Yeah, and then I can't remember the guitar player's name, which is upsetting, but he played acoustic, and then I also can't. Maybe it was Kenny White on drums. I know he did Miles Davis' Bitches Brew album on drums. But I just remember sitting there being like, whoa, this is like the A-list of players right here.
Yeah, it was Stanley Clarke, so I used to be really into him. I'm looking up Kenny White now.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't see they have this white dude who's a singer, not the same guy.
Yeah, okay. And Kenny White may not be his name, and I think it's embarrassing that I don't remember the drummer's name.
No, I'll tell you what. Miles Davis, drummer. Let's look that up real quick. Wasn't Buddy Miles. Anyway, we'll figure it out. But
nope.
Yeah, that must have been a great show.
It was. The only thing that was, for me as a musician, even like they would do blues jams or jams in E flat, and the song itself goes on for 35 minutes. Just one song.
Lenny White.
Yeah, okay, that's right.
Yeah, it was Lenny White. He played a lot
so it wasn't
with Stanley
too far
Clarke.
off.
No, he played a lot with Stanley Clarke also.
Okay, that makes sense. But and that Miles Davis fact may be incorrect now that I look back at it.
Yeah, I don't think he's old enough to have played on Bitches Brew.
Okay. Well,
maybe though. Maybe.
To be honest, we were sitting there as me and a friend brought me, and so I think he told me that, and of course I got excited, and that's the one thing I remember because I couldn't even remember his name apparently. But yeah, the show was just incredible.
What do you see? Like right now, you're super busy touring. Is that something you want to do more of, or like where do you want to be, or if you even have a goal or a vision, like over the next few years, or even long term, if you have a vision for that?
I love touring because not only do you get to go and travel and see new places, it's fun because the energy is so high and you get a rush from just being on stage. And I know every time I go out on stage, it's not necessarily nerves, but it's the feeling of nerves because you're that excited, and it's new faces every night. Some come back and you get to know people, but it's new faces. And we talk about it from a rock standpoint. Like I don't play to a click on stage, and the guitar player Tyler always talks about like it feels like you're standing on the edge of a cliff and you're looking down and the wind's blowing and you don't know what's going to happen. And that's what makes it so fun because we know we're all listening to each other and just getting into the music, and it's raw and it's powerful. So I love that aspect of touring, and I would love to keep doing it, especially I'll turn 27 in a week and a day. And at this age, that's what I want to do. I'm not tied down in that kind of way. So I can go and travel and do that. But I also want to start getting into the studio side of things because when I was a kid in high school, I was just getting into it and I loved it. Like we set up in a garage and tuned everything a specific way, and there's mics, the way you place mics and different sounds you can get. I love that kind of thing too because that's a very, very, very highly creative side of music. So I would love to get into that. I know it's difficult, especially here in Nashville, because I mean, you can literally call the A-list guys and they'll just, whatever you want, they'll just say, yeah, I'll come do it.
Right.
So they're not going to call good old Kev if they can get Shannon Forrest or Chester Thompson, even, like anyone.
Right.
But, I like the idea of being creative. I love to have creative outlets. But yeah, and it's funny, a lot of these side guys and maybe people don't really know or understand this. It's tough sometimes, and some gigs they'll dry up for a little bit, and all of a sudden you're a waiter and a musician, and typically you're already that.
Right.
And so part of me is always looking for something to do, whether it's creative, whether it's something that I look to the future for. But I'd love to keep touring because it's so much fun. Love to get into the studio if I can. I hope that kind of answered your question. I don't know if
you like touring.
Went on a tangent. Yeah.
No, it's all good.
Okay.
Are you outgoing or shy by nature?
I think I'm pretty outgoing.
Okay.
Maybe if I'm meeting someone new, I think that there's always that little bit of like excitement for me, and I just want them to like me. So I get like nervous. I'm like, yes, this is a new person. I get to test this out and see how funny I am or how much of a goof I am, and so I think I'm outgoing. I'm typically, like, the way I would describe myself is very friendly extrovert who just wants to get along with everyone. So I don't know. I don't think I'm too shy, but I'm also, if I know, like, if I'm in a huge group of new people, I'm not the guy that like takes control of the room, right. But I will definitely be outgoing.
Gotcha. Well, that probably helps as far as you talk about the hang. That makes that, I'm sure that contributes to the appeal, that why people want to bring you out on the road with them.
Right. Yeah.
Do you have?
Well, and I'm a drummer, so I'm not trying to steal the spotlight from a singer or guitar player either. I don't think so. That kind of works out.
Does that happen once in a while? Not with you. I'm just saying. Have you heard stories where somebody was brought into the band and there's a main artist, and all of a sudden the guy who's playing guitar, he's stepping out in front of the stage and not realizing that it's great you're playing lead guitar, but we have an artist here that's the star.
I have seen from a live aspect side of things, the way certain bands vibe on stage or put out like energy. I've seen and I've probably been guilty of this too occasionally. Like, I've seen a guitar player just go rogue and have an amazing time, but their singer is very calm, collected, not doing that. So that guitar player stands out, and of course everyone's starting to look over there, and I think either the singer or the manager or whoever looks and goes, this is a problem because it's distracting from the product, which is either the song or the artist. So that becomes a problem. And then I know there was a rumor of this from a friend, but like basically there was a guy that had a following of his own, and he was a really like talented drummer. And so after the show, people were coming up and going, I love your videos. I love your tutorial. I love your playing. And I think it upset some of the higher ups in that artistry.
Right.
And he didn't get called back because he was so established as his own thing. It had nothing to do with his playing or who he was as a person. It was literally the fact that he was the show, the spotlight. And I think some artists don't care because they're like, good, I want my bass player, guitar player, keyboard player, drummer, whoever to be that guy. I want to have the best of the best or the most entertaining. But I think as a side musician or as even a member of a band, recognizing where you fit into the puzzle of the collected, like, everything. And sometimes if you don't mesh well or someone doesn't like what you're doing, you can find yourself kicked to the curb. But it hasn't happened to me yet that I know of. I'll probably get a call after this.
Man. Usually awareness is a good prevention for that happening.
Yeah. Or one friend in the band coming to you and being like, hey, like, I just want to give you a heads up. But yeah.
You have any hobbies or interests outside of music?
I'm just kind of a very, very chill individual. I love being around people. And so I love trying to be healthy, exercising. I love doing outdoorsy stuff just because I think exploring is really fun. But I wouldn't say necessarily like I have this one hobby that I'm like super into. I like reading in downtime. I like traveling for fun when I get the chance. Sports, it's always funny. I talk with a bunch of musician guys, and one of my friends calls everything sports ball because he hates sports. But I've loved sports for a long time, and I've also realized how easy it is if you know anything about sports, right? So let's say you and I meet for the first time, and let's say your teams are the Tampa teams,
right?
And it's just the easiest way to get in on a good side with someone and go, man, your Tampa Bay Rays, man, they're crushing it. Or, ooh, they've been in a slump. What's going on with this pitcher?
You know what?
And all of a sudden, I told my friend that, who's a musician, and of course he still jokes about sports ball, but it's so. And I'll even talk about my teams, and I love when I get to have to talk to like Philadelphia Eagles fans or Giants fans because they hate Dallas Cowboys fans,
of course.
But it's fun because all of a sudden they're not like nervous. They're like, ooh, this guy, ooh, he's the enemy. But it's fun, and you get to really know someone. And I used to love playing basketball and baseball. I was terrible at football and can't skate to save my life, but I love those sports. So that would be another hobby. I don't play. I actually, freshman year at Belmont, played pickup basketball and rolled my ankle, and Chester had been warning me. He's like, don't hurt yourself doing anything athletic. And I roll my ankle, and it looks like Shrek's foot. And I had to go into a lesson with him, and I was like, he's going to murder me when he sees my leg. So I put jeans on. It was hot, and like wrapped my foot as tight as I could with a bandage and put on these big boots. And he saw me kind of limping around. He goes, what's wrong? I was like, leg's kind of asleep. And we get in there, and I just remember every time I had to move my foot, it was just like wincing in pain. And maybe he picked up on it, but I got away with it for the few weeks that it really hurt. So I don't really play anymore, but that's another hobby of mine, I guess.
That's a good outlet, man.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm trying to be mindful of time here, so I'm going to ask you one more question.
Sure thing.
Let me wrap it up. Who's had the biggest influence on your life so far?
You mean from like any kind of aspect of life, or from a music life?
You tell me.
Okay. Let's see. Biggest influence on my life.
Or, the most important person in your life so far.
Yeah. I think I would have to say Mom. And as maybe cliche as that is, I think it's important, one, how you start, how you're raised, what kind of principles and morals and just everything that gets ingrained into you as a person early on. And the other thing that's super important to me was the fact that no matter what I was doing, she was always completely supportive, as if I was the best at what I was trying to do. Even though, like, deep down I knew I wasn't, like, the best baseball player or the best drummer or the best student. She treated it like I was. And that was just so important to have that. And I'm notorious, obviously to my friends of, I'm on the road and I don't call her as much as I really should. But she has influenced me in so many ways, and we have this kind of like unspoken connection. And I think that she's best mom in the world. And I know everyone says that about their mom, but she's been 100% influential on my life. And I think musically, separately, maybe Todd London, and he may be shocked if he ever hears this, that he was the guy. But I remember he told me this story, and it was basically we're all in Belmont, and we have a combined seminar where all the drum majors come together and do a class every week. And there's about 40-ish people there, and he's leading the class, and he goes, all right, everyone look around the room and find the best players in here and think about the best players and look to your left and your right. And he's like, we had a little bit of a moment to kind of look, and of course I'm thinking, wow, like there's some talent in this room. And I was floating in the middle of it, and he goes, maybe one of you will reach that level that you guys have aspired your whole life, that like ultra rock star or the very successful band or studio guy. He says, maybe one. And the whole room just goes dead quiet. I was like, wow, it's so weird to hear a teacher at a school that's trying to propel you into this life being honest.
Right.
And he goes, can you keep going knowing that that's the case? And I remember kids, not from this happening, but I remember from my freshman year to the senior year, maybe more than half of the kids didn't graduate or change degrees or left the school. And so there were about 4 to 5, maybe 6 guys in my class that ended up with that major. And I think I talked to our mutual friend Jim about this a little bit. It was like, Todd taught me that music is so much more than the gig or the money or the actual music. It's the idea of, can you enjoy this thing so much that you do whatever you can to be a part of it? And right now I'm working on it. Hopefully I'm making Todd proud, because he's one of my private lesson teachers and clearly influenced me. But it was just something that struck me was, the odds are against you. Are you still willing to try?
Well, it's realistic. Everything's a vetting process, man.
Right.
And most people don't stick stuff out in general. Business is anything. It's very, it's you know. Hey, thanks very much for listening. You can sign up to get notified of future episodes on our website at everyonelovesguitar.com. Now go play your guitar and have fun. Till next time, I'm out. Peace. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.